The New York Giants head into the 2026 offseason with a ton of pressure to build around Jackson Dart. So in today's video, I will be giving you guys a mock offseason for the New York Giants. Hit the like and subscribe button if you guys do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. So yes, we are starting our mock offseason series. How the mock off seasons work is we are going to begin by talking about the New York Giants, what went right, what went wrong. We'll then look at their coaching staff situation, which obviously we're going to have to hire a new head coach. We'll then look at their salary cap. We're going to open up some money. We'll re-sign some players, and then we'll head into free agency to make this team a better roster. And then at the very end, I'll give you guys a 3-round mock draft to wrap us all out. With that said, let's go ahead and talk about the New York Giants 2025 season because let's be honest, it was a complete roller coaster. As you can see, the New York Giants went 4-13. As we all know, Brian Daboll was fired mid-season. They then had an interim head coach for the rest of the year. It does not appear the interim head coach will be the next head coach of this team. But it was a season where the Giants were a competitive football team. Take, for example, a 34-24 loss to San Francisco, a 24-20 loss to Chicago, a 27-20 loss to Green Bay, an overtime loss to the Detroit Lions. Hell, they beat the Los Angeles Chargers and they beat the Philadelphia Eagles, and they probably should have beat the Denver Broncos. So despite the fact this team went 4-13, I think this was actually a really productive year for this Giants franchise. I know that in a world where we want to see results quickly, this was not the year that a lot of Giants fans were hoping for. But I do believe in the long haul, this season could actually be seen as a very positive thing as this team starts to head towards the future, because you have now your franchise quarterback, of course, at least you think. You have your wide receiver 1, you have your RB1, you have Andrew Thomas. We'll talk about Jermaine Illuminor and the rest of the offensive line a little later. The defensive line looks good. Abdul Carter showed a lot of glimpses and flashes. Brian Burns had a career year. You have some pieces in the back end that you're really confident in. There's a lot of good things that happen here. And again, in some of these games, if a couple whistles go your way, if a couple catches go your way, if you just could have managed to stay healthy, you're looking at a Giants team that probably wasn't going to make a playoff run or anything like that, but maybe could have won 7 or 8 games this year. Obviously, that's not what happened. The team was ultimately a team that won 4 games, so they were not a great football team. They had a lot of issues on both sides of the ball, but there's a lot of positive things to take away from this team moving forward. So you're 4-13, you're looking for a new head coach, but what about some team needs? Well, in terms of some team needs, I think the needs here are pretty clear. I think you need wide receiver depth. I believe you're probably going to lose Wan'Dale Robinson. He's going to ultimately make a lot of money in the open market, and I think you can upgrade there because you have a top 5 pick to work with. So wide receiver is a big deal. Interior offensive line, specifically guard play, is going to be a big deal. You have John Runyon, you have Greg Van Roten. You have some free agents there, but I think you want to get a little bit younger and maybe a bit more talented in the interior. I think cornerback is also a bit of a sneaky need here as well, especially if you don't bring back Cordell Flott. I think you have some talent, obviously, here. Drew Phillips, Paulson Adebo, Cordell Flott, but we're going to probably need to add a bit more talent in that room. Hopefully, we can find a way to do so in the offseason. Probably a linebacker, especially one to pair up next to Bobby Okereke, and probably some interior defensive line depth. I think those are all some of the biggest needs for this team. Before we get into actually addressing those needs, let's go ahead and talk about the head coaching candidates. And there's a number of candidates for this team, but I've narrowed it down to 2 guys that I think would be awesome fits for the New York Giants. In fact, I'll even throw a third potential head coaching candidate that I've heard some buzz around. Let's go and start off with the 2 big names, Kevin Stefanski, John Harbaugh. I think they both make a ton of sense. A name that has been kind of tossed around and floated around the New York Giants landscape is Mike McCarthy. And as somebody who's followed Mike McCarthy throughout his career, I love the way that he's been able to adjust and evolve his game and his play calling. I think he'd be a really solid fit here for the Giants. But for me personally, I think Stefanski and Harbaugh just make a ton of sense. If you're looking for pedigree, experience, years of doing his job, look at John Harbaugh, right? 18 years, 12 playoff runs, a Super Bowl championship, I think 6 division championships, something along those lines. He obviously led Baltimore to a ton of success. Now, the one flaw to Harbaugh is that he's not really an offensive guy, nor is he much of a defensive guy. So you're looking at somebody who's going to be a bit of a culture builder, somebody who's going to try and manage the game, in which, let's be honest, Harbaugh in the past couple years has not managed the game to the same level he did in years past. There also has been a lot of off the field issues with Harbaugh throughout his tenure, in terms of he had some issues with the guys back when they won the championship. He had some issues with Lamar Jackson this year. So he does have a couple asterisks and flaws to his resume. But again, he has the experience, the pedigree, and everything that the Giants might be looking for, stability. So I think Harbaugh does give them a good option. Then there's a bit more of a flashier option in Kevin Stefanski. Obviously, Stefanski was the Browns head coach the past few years, and I think he did a decent job with the Browns. Now, ultimately, he did not have the control of the quarterback. The Deshaun Watson thing, who knows whose idea it was? Was it Stefanski's idea? Was it Andrew Berry's idea? We don't know. But what I do know is Stefanski is one of the better offensive play designers and, in my opinion, play callers in the NFL. He just has never really had the talent to support a high-functioning offense. He's led the Browns to some playoff runs. I think with Jackson Dart, I think with Cam, I think with Malik, and some decent pieces on the offensive line, Theo Johnson included there, I think Stefanski would be a great fit for the Giants. So when it comes down to it, I think all three of those options are really sharp options. I think that, frankly, if they were to hire any of those guys, it would get a thumbs up for me. I think the best candidate here, though, is Kevin Stefanski. I think he'd be an excellent fit, and I think Cam Scatabo would be kind of unlocked even more so with Stefanski. Let's not forget, Stefanski coached Nick Chubb, and I know they're different players, but there's also some similarities there. I'm going to hire Kevin Stefanski. I think he would probably be a top candidate for the New York Giants, and I think the Giants would present a really interesting job for Stefanski because there is a quarterback for him to work with. So we're going to go with Kevin Stefanski to be the head coach. If it's Harbaugh, McCarthy, Kubiak, somebody like that, I would be okay with those as well. With that said, we've talked about the team, we talked about the team needs, we talked about the head coach. Let's look at their cap space situations. As of today, as of when I'm recording this, and this is January 9th, so this will be fluctuating, and the number might be different if you're watching this a few days from now. They are sitting at just $4 million in open cap space. Now, the good news for the New York Giants is they have a ton of avenues they can explore to open up more cap space. They have this young rookie quarterback on a rookie deal, so they don't have a massive $50-60 million deal that they're kind of having to work around. Take, for example, the Bengals with all their massive contracts, the Dallas Cowboys with Dak's contract, Josh Allen's contract. Like, they don't have to worry about that because they have Jackson Dart on a cheap deal. So there's a number of ways that they can open up some money. So the first thing I do want to do is I want to go ahead and give Kayvon Thibodeau a contract extension. Now, I know he ended the season on IR, but I thought he had a really good year in general. Now, I know he's not the pass rushing monster that the team maybe drafted him to be coming out of Oregon, but what he has developed himself into is one of the better run defenders in that edge position. And you're looking at a team that has a Brian Burns and an Abdul Carter, both really good pass rushers, but I wouldn't necessarily call, especially not Abdul Carter yet, elite run defenders. Having Kayvon Thibodeau be a part of that rotation, I think makes a ton of sense. And if you can front load that contract and maybe give yourself flexibility down the road when Abdul Carter's contract comes up and when Jackson Dart's contract comes up, then maybe you can get off that Kayvon contract. So in terms of a number, I didn't put a number on in this thing just because I don't know what he's going to get. I'm going to assume it's going to be something along the lines of 4 years, 100, maybe 5 for 125 with no guarantees in the last 2 years, something along those lines. $25 million a year seems to be what he's going to be asking for, or around that range. And I think I'd be pretty comfortable paying that price. Again, because you're not paying Abdul Carter a ton of money. So I'm okay with that. Let's bring Kayvon Thibodeau in and back, at least until Abdul and Jackson Dart start getting their big bags. Then we'll have to have that conversation and throw that down the road. But what that does do, if you do give him that contract, it opens up $10 million in open cap space this season. So because we extend Kayvon Thibodeau, we're now looking at $14 million in cap space to work with, but we're not done. Because unfortunately, $14 million is basically just enough to pay your draft class. So we're going to have to cut some players. And again, the New York Giants have a handful of guys that are really good cut candidates. So we're going to cut a number of players. These are all pre-June 1st. You can also do some post-June 1st, depending on if you want to do that. But I didn't really want to. I want to do pre-June 1st so I can spend that money on opening day of free agency. Some of the names we're going to talk about: John Runyon, Devin Singletary, Graham Gano, and James Hudson. John Runyon, obviously a starting guard. I think he's a fine player for you, but I want to find an upgrade there. He's not a young player. I wouldn't call him ancient or anything like that. He's a fine starter, but if you cut him, that opens up $9 million in cap space. So obviously that just makes a ton of sense to go for it. When it comes to Devin Singletary, you have Cam Scatabo. I do imagine they're probably going to draft a running back in the 4th or 5th round to maybe replace Singletary. If you cut Singletary, that's an additional $5 million. Then there's Graham Gano. Unfortunately for Gano, he just suffered with injuries the entire season. So he's an older kicker, coming off a lot of injuries. They already struggled at kicker this year. I think they probably draft one this season. Look at that Ole Miss kid, by the way. I don't know if he's eligible for it, but that Ole Miss kid is pretty nasty. So We'll see if he gets into the league. I'm going to draft a kicker in like the 6th or 7th round. I won't, but they will. So you cut Graham Gano, that's $4.5 million. And lastly, James Hudson, sort of your rotational tackle who has gotten a decent bit of playing time throughout his career. If you cut him, though, that does save you $5.5 million. I like Marcus Mbo. I think he can kind of be your swing tackle / starter. Plus the flexibility of Jermaine Illuminor, assuming we bring him back. I think we're fine without James Hudson. So those are the cuts I'm going to do. I'm also going to restructure 2 deals, those being Brian Burns and Andrew Thomas. Now, when you restructure a deal, essentially what you're doing is pushing back their money. There's a variety of different ways you can push back the money, depending on if you want to add a void year, if you don't want to add a void year. It's very complicated and convoluted, so I didn't want to dive too far into it because I'm just not going to go that deep into it. I'm not an accountant, so I don't know the ins and outs of the contracts. That all said, again, all these numbers are via over the cap. If you restructure Brian Burns, you're looking at $14 million. If you restructure Andrew Thomas, you're looking at $11 million. So from all those moves, again, extending Kayvon Thibodeau, cutting John Runyon, Devin Singletary, Graham Gano, and James Hudson, restructuring Brian Burns, and restructuring Andrew Thomas, we are now working with $63 million in open cap. Now, with that said, you could open up a little bit more if you want to go a bit more big name hunting in free agency or trying to re-sign a lot of your guys back. You could maybe make a few more restructures, cuts, and extensions, but I was pretty comfortable with the $63 million. I didn't want to do too much restructuring and really make things difficult down the road. So we're going to stop here when it comes to opening up some space, but I do want to recognize that there's more ways for this team to open up even more cap space if they wanted to. So we have $63 million to work with, but this team does have a number of free agents that we have to have a conversation about. So this is over the cap. These are all the free agents this team does have this year, and there are some big names that I definitely think this team should consider bringing back. Obviously, Greg Van Roten is going to be 36. I don't think we bring him back. I know he was a decent starter for us, but I think we should get a little bit younger and a bit more talented there. Jermaine Illuminor, we will be bringing back. I'm going to bring back Jermaine Illuminor, who is going to be getting up there in age, but is still a really solid tackle / guard / kind of whatever you need him to be. I'm going to give him around $8 to $9 million per year. I wrote down 3 years, 24. If you want to do 3 years, 27, then I'll have the open cap space by the end to make that happen. So Jermaine Illuminor will be back on this team. Wan'Dale Robinson, unfortunately, will not be. Right now, his contract projection is around $15 million annually, and while I think he's a really good slot receiver, I just think we could find an upgrade with our 5th or 2nd round pick. So we're not going to bring back Wan'Dale Robinson. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Then there's Cordo Flott, and I'm going to go ahead and throw in Dane Belton here. These are guys that got a lot of reps this year. You can see their snap count, 66, 63. I believe Cordo dealt with an injury this year, but man, when they are out there, they've been playing really good. Belton took a step forward this year. Flott kind of has also ascended. They're both very young, 26 years old. They won't cost you a ton either. Cordo Flott being a bit more expensive. I'm going to give Cordo Flott an extension here. 3 years, $30 million. That's about $10 million annually. Maybe you can put some sort of out after the 2nd year in case, he doesn't live up to the contract. And then Dane Belton, I'll also bring him back on a 2-year, $12 million deal. Safety's not their biggest need because they do have Javon Holland and they have Tyler Nubin, but I think Dane Belton's a quality rotational player that could very well start for you next year if you don't believe in Tyler Nubin. So bringing back Dane Belton. And when it comes to the rest of these guys, the only big names that I would consider bringing back would be like a Rakeem Nunez Roaches, but he's 33 years old, so I didn't want to prioritize that. There's other names, obviously Russell Wilson. Get out of here. Nobody likes you here. I'm kidding. I like Russell Wilson, but they don't. Micah McFadden's an interesting one. He had a really good start to his career with the Giants, and then he had that major injury this year. If you want to bring him back, I think it makes a ton of sense, but I think the number has to be right. I would imagine Micah might be looking for like a 1-year prove-it deal, and then he can go after the bag the following season, but it is one of those things where if I am the New York Giants, do I give it to him? Do I don't give it to him? In this scenario, I'm not going to re-sign him. However, I will throw the caveat that if you would prefer to keep Micah McFadden here, I'm more than okay with giving him like a 1-year, $5 million deal just to kind of say, hey, let's see what you look like post-injury. If you look good, you'll play, you'll get reps with us, and then next year we'll go ahead and get you paid. We'll get you that 3 to 4 year deal. But you got to prove to us you can stay healthy for a season. So in this exercise, I did not re-sign him. But trust me, if you want him on the team, I have enough cap space by the end to give him like a 1-year, $4 to $5 million deal. So in fact, let's just throw it in there. We'll re-sign Micah McFadden just to make you guys happy. But at the same time, if a team's going to offer him a multi-year deal worth $15, $20 million, then we're not going to match that. So assuming Micah doesn't get that type of deal, if he wants to return on a 1-year prove-it deal, we'll give that to him. But that's it. We're going to bring back Jermaine Illuminor, Cordell Flott, and Dane Belton. And again, if Micah McFadden does not get any massive deals and just wants a 1-year prove-it deal, we'll give Micah the deal as well. So those are all our re-signings. Now, again, let's talk about the contracts here. Jermaine Illuminor, $8 million per year, Cordell Flott, $10 million per year, and Dane Belton, $6 million per year. If you do include Micah McFadden in there, which we will for this exercise, that's about we'll say $4 million in cap space. Right there, we went from 63 all the way down to about $35 million, which is still a decent bit of cash to go out there and sign some impact players right now. With that said, let's go ahead and hop into free agency. So in terms of some more team needs, I do want to re-emphasize this: wide receiver, interior offensive line, cornerback, linebacker, interior defensive line. Because we did bring back Dane Belton and Cordell Flott, I do think cornerback is maybe not the biggest of needs right now, but if there's an option out there in the draft or free agency, we'll definitely take a look at it. So with that said, let's go ahead and start off by trying to add to this interior offensive line. And there was a number of offensive guards I did consider. There are some older guys. There are some in their prime guys. There are some expensive guys. Take, for example, like a David Edwards. He's going to be probably 18 to 20 million, something crazy like that. He's a good player. I'm going to bring in a player who I thought took a big step forward this year. I think he's actually been really good for several years now. He is a little bit undersized for the guard position, but I will say the Giants have been a team that have kind of had these 300-ish pound guards, and I think that kind of fits the mold here. We'll see what the new offensive coordinator / head coach want, but we're going to bring in Dylan Parham on a 3-year, $30 million deal. This is via PF 6'3", 26 years old, 63.6 overall grade, 62.3 pass blocking grade, 63.1 run blocking grade, 843 snaps, 6 sacks allowed, 5 penalties. I will say when it comes to the sacks allowed, they did have a statue in the pocket in Geno Smith. This is from last year, 74.3 overall grade, 75.6 run blocking grade, 67.5 pass blocking grade, a little bit better numbers here. So this is somebody that I think you can trust to kind of hold down that position. You can see a snap count here playing all at left guard. It's also fair to mention the Raiders have not had the roster around him. The center play, tackle play has been up and down too. So while the numbers are not like, wow, Dylan Parham, 6 sacks allowed, it's kind of a bigger number, I'm not too worried about it. When it comes down to it, I think that this would be a major upgrade here for us. He's a lot younger. I think it gives us a lot of different options for things to do. He's consistently getting better. I like the idea of bringing in Dylan Parham. Again, 3 years, $30 million. We can maybe make it to where the first 2 years are guaranteed. The third year, not so much. Next up, big name here, linebacker Leo Chenal, 3 years, $27 million. Obviously, Kansas City linebacker. They just paid Nick Bolton. I don't think they're going to be able to afford Nick Bolton and Leo Chenal. Leo Chenal, really excellent player for the Chiefs. This is via PFF, a 75.0 overall grade, a 76.2 run defense grade, and a 72.6 coverage grade. 3 sacks, 31 solo tackles, 14 assists. This is from 2024, an 83.6 overall grade, a 90.2 run defense grade, and a 75.0 coverage grade. 40 solo, 1 sack, 10 assisted, 3 fumbles. Again, you can maybe bring back Micah McFadden, but if you do, you're still going to need some, for sure, insurance there. Leo Chenal is a stud linebacker that I think completely checks out. And the last move we're going to go ahead and make is adding some depth into the interior defensive line by bringing in defensive tackle Roy Lopez. Roy had a really good year for the Detroit Lions, at 68.7 overall grade, a 63.6 pass rushing grade, and a 68.9 run defense grade. 19 tackles, 3 sacks, 8 assists. This is from 2024, a 67.4 pass rush grade. Not the best run defense grade, but I thought he was really good this year, so maybe it was just a scheme issue. 18 tackles, 1 sack, 12 assisted. One more, if you go back to 2023, you can see the run defense grade got a lot better, 64.2. Obviously, we have Dexter Lawrence, so we're feeling really good about that. We also have a couple younger guys there, too. We need some pieces around him. We're hoping that Darius Alexander can take a step forward. I think Roy Lopez would be somebody that can fill in there. And I also believe they probably should draft one, too, in the back end of their draft to find a bit more depth. Now, with that said, we do have about $10 million still to work with here, but that money is going to go towards our draft class. I do want to say one more thing. Again, if you wanted to restructure another deal, I think that money could go towards a lot more depth options and pieces like that, but we're not going to go into that for the sake of this video. But all right, after free agency, we brought in Dylan Parham, we brought in Leo Chenal, and we brought in Roy Lopez. We also, of course, re-signed Jermaine Illuminor, Cordell Flott, and Dane Belton. We've also restructured the deals of Burns, Thomas. We cut Runyon, Singletary, Gano, and Hudson, and we extended Cave on Thibodeau. Let us now head into our mock draft. So I said at the beginning of the video that I was just going to do a 3-round mock draft, but then I just remembered the New York Giants do not have a 4th-round pick. So for you guys, I'll give you guys that extra 4th round here. With that said, we're going to hop right into it, and the New York Giants are up at number 5. No surprises here. Dante, Fernando, Arvel. Little surprise here, Jeremiah Love. Obviously, a couple options you could definitely go down here. If you don't love the idea of Dane Belton starting and you're not a big fan of Tyler Nubin, Caleb Downs, one of the best players in this draft class, that would completely check out. I am probably going to go ahead and just draft a receiver here because you look at edge rusher not being a big need. You could go Peter Woods, but it feels a little early here at number 5. Corner, maybe. I like Mansour Delane. I think Jeremiah McCoy is really good too, but not at number 5. We're going to go ahead and take a receiver here. The question is going to be, do you trust Jordan Tyson to stay healthy? And maybe even more importantly, do you trust Jordan Tyson to stay healthy at MetLife? The answer for me is an absolute no. I don't trust him to stay healthy, but I do trust Carnell Tate. Look, I think Jordan Tyson's the better player than Carnell Tate. I think it's actually, I would say pretty soundly, Tyson's the better player. But Tyson gets hurt what feels like every year. He got hurt a lot this year. He was hurt in 2023. Last year, he was pretty healthy, but he has had major injuries. Not like one nagging knee injury that happens over and over again, but just random injuries every single year, it feels like. And I can't trust that here from the New York Giants, who just had a season where our quarterback had multiple concussions, our receiver tore his ACL, and our running back broke his freaking ankle. MetLife is cursed. Let's take Carnell Tate here. Excellent downfield player, has some of the most sure hands in this draft. I think he's an absolute stud. All right, at number 37, we just took Carnell Tate. I am now going to be looking at interior defensive line, corner, and probably interior offensive line is kind of what I'm looking at here. And I really like the options that are available here. I'm not going to lie to you. Mari Washington, good player, great first step. I kind of think Darius Alexander's in some ways a little similar here. Pregnon, I think, makes a ton of sense here. He did play left guard. We can easily switch him over to play right guard. I mean, it's a bit of a different, position change, but same principles. I think he'd be excellent for this team. We'll keep an eye on that one. I also want to throw a shout out to Chris Johnson. This is absolutely a my guy pick. I think Chris Johnson is an absolute stud. But because we brought back Cordell Flott and we have Paul Sodebo and we have Drew Phillips, I kind of feel like our main 3 are going to be there. So I think we can maybe push cornerback a little bit down the board. Let's go ahead and take an offensive lineman here. And I think I'm going to take probably Emmanuel Pregnon. Now, Jennings Dunker is a really close second here. Jennings Dunker is a tackle, but I think you can switch him inside to play guard. He'd also give you flexibility to also play in the inside or the outside, but I'm going to go with Emmanuel Pregnon here. I just think he is the surefire guard. Switch him over to play right guard. Had a great year for Oregon. Let's take Emmanuel Pregnon here. Again, no 3rd round pick. You could trade back from 37 and maybe pick up a 3rd, but I don't think that's going to happen. We're back up at pick 105. And immediately, I can't lie to you, Julian Neal is kind of screaming out to me right now. Same with Manny Muhammad. I think he's a little bit underrated on PFF's big board. Julian Neal, great size, great length. I think he's got some work to do in coverage, but I think he is a player that you can kind of develop. And I think he kind of would give you some similar feels and vibes to like a Paulson Adebo. So we've kind of shored up the offensive line here. We picked up Emmanuel Pregnon. We picked up Dylan Parham. I wouldn't be afraid to double down here and take another offensive lineman. Like DJ Campbell, for example, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but I think that's more of a 5th round pick that we can find for some depth options. Tight end, I feel okay with Theo Johnson. I feel more than okay with Theo Johnson. I think I might go corner and interior defensive line. Let's look at interior defensive line here. I like the names here. I can't lie to you. Skylar Gill-Howard, very much a more pass rush oriented piece that I feel like this team could use. Dexter Lawrence did not have his best pass rushing season this past year. Tim Keenan is sort of your traditional big brick wall up the middle that you can pair an opposite of, I guess not opposite, but kind of be a rotational piece with Dexter Lawrence. I don't really hate the idea of that. I don't really know if this team needs pass rush much, but if you're looking for it, I think that checks out. I'm really torn here on Julian Neal and Tim Keenan. I think I could wait on Tim Keenan. He might be able to fall into the 5th round. And if I can't get Tim Keenan, I think Cole Brevard makes a ton of sense too. I mean, this is another one of those guys that's just an absolute tank, a brick wall. How big is this guy? Yeah, 346. So let's go with Julian Neal here. Let's go. Or we could look at running back too. We could look at running back. Ooh, Nick Singleton. Oh, man. That's intriguing. That is intriguing. I'm not a Nick Singleton guy, but man, he's got some absolute juice. I mean, just a speed demon. And I know you have Tyrone Tracy, but I think you can maybe find an upgrade there. Let's pass on the running back. You can maybe find a speedster a little bit later in this class. Not that there's a ton of them this year, but you could probably find one down the board, or maybe you can find one in free agency for cheap. I think I might go with Julian Neal here. I just think that he gives you the best option. I think you can draft an interior defensive lineman a little later. We have linebacker depth. We feel good there. Maybe we can find a slot receiver, maybe. Like Zachariah Branch would give you a ton of juice on the outside, and he could be a punt returner for you as well. That's definitely an option. In fact, I think I'm now kind of leaning towards Zachariah Branch here. But you know what, though, at the same time, you could probably find another receiver a little bit down the board here that has some juice and has some speed. So let's go ahead and take Julian Neal here. The cornerback board is kind of thinning out. I've heard a lot of buzz about Julian Neal potentially being a day 2 pick. Let's go Julian Neal here. Let's go ahead and snag him up here for the Giants. But all right, this is our mock draft. Carnell Tate, Emmanuel Pregnon, and Julian Neal. It also says that we should take an Armace and Thomas. Buddy, we have Abdul Carter, so that doesn't check out. But all right, that is our mock offseason for the New York Giants. You guys let me know in the comment section below. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What would you change? Let me know down below. And if you're new here, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. This is going to be a new series. We did this last year. We're going to bring it back for this year. Love you guys. Peace.